Hello, this is Johnny Cycles with CyclesGaming.com. Just finishing up my league. The last match was against a Storm deck that had some sweet tech and new cards. Made the archetype look like it might be more competitive than it has been in the past. But I'm here with a wrap up for my Dragons and Modern deck this month. This is our Boros Gideon Tribal with Sarkhan the Masterless. Our main game plan, as you've seen, is to use Gideons and our early drops to manage the board, put pressure on our opponent's life total, then stick a Sarkhan the Masterless to make some dragons, and turn them all into 4/4 flyers, swing in, kill our opponent. Did we ever execute that game plan? No, unfortunately not in our league. We managed it in some of our practice games that unfortunately did not have sound, so I didn't even post them. I think in all of our games that we played, we didn't ever really get to execute that game plan. We either lost before we could get the Sarkhan down, or the Sarkhan came down and had no planeswalkers that turned into dragons, or we won on the back of Urza Saga tokens and Gideon. And that's our secondary, well, theoretically was our secondary game plan, which was to use Urza Saga and Karn Sign of Urza, which is another planeswalker we can make into a dragon, but that synergizes with the constructs we are making since it makes them himself, to go wide and big with a bunch of constructs and swing in. And we did get a couple wins that way. We ended up going 2-3 in our league. The deck felt competitive in each of our matches other than the one against Mardu, which is basically Rakdos Scam, splashing white for Solitude. We just never got any traction. Our opponent outvalued us with 2 and 3 for ones constantly. Would we be able to compete with that deck with a different hand or different draw? Maybe, but it feels like a pretty bad matchup. We also lost to Hardened Scales Affinity, and that was the match that felt like the one that got away, where our opponent had some mana problems. They got really lucky after we took a line based on them missing a land drop to not only make the land drop, but have the Walking Ballista in hand with the Hardened Scales out to destroy both of our X1 creatures. We had 3 on the battlefield at the time, so 2 of the 3 were dead. We had a very aggressive start to punish their stumble, but they were able to draw out of it. So that one was the one that felt like it got away. There were other parts in that match where it was close. We got the one game, and then the third game, I think we just got steamrolled and we just couldn't find answers. And I can't remember if we got stumbled on mana. I know in the first game we either flooded, and then the third game stumbled on mana, missed our land drops, or the reverse. And then the last match there against Storm, game 1, we didn't have any interaction. We were just playing straight up the curve, creatures and planeswalkers. Storm is going to prey on that to then and win that type of matchup 100% of the time, I would say, 95% of the time. Game 2, we found our hate pieces, but our opponent was able to grind out some value with empty the Warrens and get there. We made a couple mistakes, both in our surveil there, putting a bolt in the yard instead of keeping it, thinking we had enough removal and pressure to get through and kill our opponent. And then also with some weird tapping where we cast March of the Otherworldly Light before our opponent had paid their blue for the Esper Sentinel cost or tax, and so they were able instead to negate the first one, so then we had to use the second one, and that really cost us the game. So that was the big mistake that cost us that game, I would say, because then we didn't have the second March of Otherworldly Light to deal with the Goblin Electromancer that they cast after we killed their Brawl. Anyway, so that was kind of a frustrating loss. Opponent's super nice, though. It was good chatting with him or her. Overall, I think, as far as the Dragons in Modern deck, we're not playing any Dragons. We're supposed to be turning our Planeswalkers into Dragons. We didn't get to do that a single time. Sarkhan felt like more of a liability as a 5-drop that we just could barely ever cast. More often than not, when we had it in our hand, we wish we didn't, and we weren't able to cast it. There was at least one game where we drew it and it was a good draw against Mono Black. I think part of the problem is it's a bit of a nombo here with the Urza Saga and Sarkhan the Masterless, wanting to get the 5 mana, but losing your Urza Saga after a couple turns. We're always just set back on mana, so we're never able to play them on curve. We're never able to go 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop, 5-drop, unless we don't hit the Urza Saga. And we just didn't have games where we saw that kind of play where we were able to execute that game plan. Instead, we either had the Urza Sagas, and that was the route we took, and then we never hit 5 mana, or we just never hit 5 mana, period. So the deck didn't come together the way I'd hoped with our turning things into Dragon's Plan. It was super fun. I think overall Gideon as a Planeswalker, he really had his moments and I think is powerful. And if you enjoy playing Gideon, I think Boros Gideon Tribal deck in Modern is more than competitive, and I think I might try it out for my Keeping Modern Janky column at some point. The X ones, they died to Ren and 6 and Orcish Bowmasters, which is frustrating. And we only saw that matchup once, and it was really bad. But we saw Bowmasters all the time in our practice games. So keep that in mind. All of our early drops, or 1-drops, died to Bowmasters and Ren and 6. So yeah, Gideon Tribal I think is a real archetype as far as a janky archetype, real janky archetype for Modern if you want to try something different and fun that can win you some games, especially on the back of Modern Horizon 2 cards like Urza Saga and Ragavan. And then the other all-star was Doorkeeper Thrall. Man, this card is busted in a lot of ways. It really hoses a lot of strategies. It helped shut down the graveyard deck that we played. You can flash it in after having 2 creatures on the battlefield to flip your Kithian when your opponent doesn't think it's going to happen. It just does it does things that help keep us alive and help manage the board, and it should be a part of a Death and Taxes build. I have yet to play that deck, but it does seem interesting. So I love Doorkeeper Thrall. Think he's very powerful and can really shine in the right deck. Here he did his job. He kept us alive, won us some games. Our sideboard, after playing Affinity, you really want Brotherhood's End. Wrath of God, I don't think we ever played. The other cards, we didn't see Yawgmoth, so Curse Totem. We did bring it in against one match, but Containment Priest was surprisingly good. It was good against a graveyard deck. It's really in there for the Archon decks, but it does some good work otherwise. So yeah, I think if you want to make this deck more competitive, I would just eschew these entire 2 columns and go more all in on the early game, either with removal, some more Gideons, something else to support, because the 4 and 5 drops, they are more often a liability given our Urza Saga plan. But it was fun to play. I'm glad I was able to at least hit that 2-3 mark. That's the bar for my janky builds. Can I win at least 2 matches? Would have loved to have gotten the 3-2, but not disappointed with the 2-3 given the jank level of our deck and how it ended up playing out. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the gameplay in the article. This is Johnny Cycles for CyclesGaming.com. I'll catch you on the next one.
This is Johnny Cycles with CyclesGaming.com, and this has been another edition of Dragons in Modern. Be sure to go to my site and check out all of my original Magic the Gathering content, where I post articles and video of my janky modern brews in my commander decks. I'm also publishing a couple chapters every month for my science fiction fantasy novel called The Pod Kind. Check me out on YouTube as well. Click that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. And I'll catch you on the next one.